When I was first researching when the extra deck was officially standardized at 15 cards, I was surprised to find that they did this quite late into the game's history. I assumed that it would have been probably just months into organized play's lifespan before these kind of rules were implemented, but it actually turns out it wasn't until 2008, with the inception of Synchros, that Konami put a limit on the number of extra decks monsters you could play. And now this year marks 10 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! With no more than 15 cards in your extra. That's 10 years of a lot of growth and evolution of the game. 10 years of new summoning mechanics, and new monsters within those summoning mechanics. Decks that utilize multiple kinds of summoning mechanics in varied and different ways. It's not strange to see decks use Synchros, Fusions, and Xyz all in the one deck. There have been so many decks in this game's history that have utilized the extra deck to lesser and greater extents. Decks like Synchro Fusionists, which have taken a YCS top or two, could potentially play about 20 extra deck monsters and still struggle to find space. On the other hand, decks like Spellbooks could play pretty much no extra deck monsters and they would do just fine. Even something like Burning Abyss in certain formats could literally just play 3 Dante and probably still top. It's been argued many times in the past whether or not the extra deck space should increase. For those that want to see it increase, argue that the extra deck exists as options for multiple kinds of situations and you shouldn't be punished for not having access to an option should that type of scenario come up. Some decks with multiple summoning mechanics would sometimes struggle to adapt to various situations because of the lack of extra deck space. And this is at the same time while other decks, like for example Spellbook, wouldn't need to go into the extra deck for any options because they could just fade away anything that could be problematic. For those that argue it should not increase would give examples like, well, it's important to stay at 15 because this promotes a lot of decision making at the deck building process. If you are struggling to keep it to 15, then you need to prioritize those situations that might come up as you see best fit. That's the whole purpose of deck building being a challenge, the decision making. For a long time, both sides of the fence have pretty good arguments for and against. I don't think there is one side of the debate that can pull ahead of the other cut and dry. Both sides can be argued well and can be justified with good points. But now, as we move further and further down the line of Yu-Gi-Oh's lifespan, I think we have come to a point where the extra deck must absolutely increase. The extra deck needs to increase, whether it's to 16, 17, or even 20. The numbers are irrelevant, and we can discuss the semantics of just what that number should be in the future, but the purpose of this video is to convince you that the number needs to increase, whether it is to 16, or to 17, or to 50. Regardless, it needs to go up by some degree. Now just imagine your deck and think about your favorite archetype, which is quite extra deck dependent. Think about all those monsters you need for those situations that have come up over the years. Yang Zing, for example, lots of different synchro monsters for different scenarios. But now we need to throw a wrench in there, and it's Master Rule 4. Master Rule 4 demands that if you play any sort of extra deck reliant deck, or at the very least an extra deck reliant archetype which needs to put more than one extra deck monster in the field, then you have to play link monsters. Even pendulum decks especially are inherently reliant on having to play link monsters. There is no choice in this matter whatsoever. If you want to keep those monsters from before, you need to play link monsters. But the problem is that some decks don't play link monsters because they want to play link monsters, or they like the link mechanic, or they like the link monster's effect, or because the link monster provide any sort of situational effects or benefits. People now play link monsters for no reason whatsoever other than to create more space on the board with the arrows. Mrs. Radiant, Decode Talker, Proxy Dragon, Link Spider, these are all examples of monsters which could for all intents and purposes have completely blank text and do absolutely nothing, yet people would still be forced to run some of them regardless. However, because we are now forced to play basically blank monsters for no reason whatsoever other than an arrow, then to compensate, I feel links have revitalized the discussion on more extra deck spaces. Just think about it, it's been 10 years with about 4 summoning mechanics introduced in this time frame. How come the extra deck space hasn't also increased to compensate? I think the number should increase to 17, maybe perhaps 18. Those are my thoughts and that's my view and opinion, but you can let me know yours. Do you think it's time for the extra deck to finally increase? Do we need more spaces? Leave your thoughts down below and I'll be sure to read and reply to them. Like and subscribe, and until next time.